The live within your means advice sounds good until you look at what that actually looks like right now, because people are already doing that. They're budgeting and cutting back and being more careful with money than ever, and it still isn't enough to feel stable. So when people say to just live within your means, what they're really saying is just get comfortable with less. But then the question that nobody wants to answer is how much less exactly? Because at some point you can cut out everything and it still isn't enough to live on your own or save money or feel like you're moving forward, and that's not just a budgeting issue. And I've been doing a lot of these things and it still doesn't feel like enough. So that's honestly why I've started to think differently about what kind of life I actually want to build.
I love this comment. Pause the video and take a moment to read it, because I've talked about this a little bit, and it's true. It's always like, how much more in my means do you really want me to live? Like, am I supposed to never be happy? It's like, I'm sorry I made the ingredients to make a cake, or one time this month I went to Starbucks and got my favorite coffee. I'm not talking about people that are stopping and getting gas station treats 3 times a day. Like, I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about the people that are struggling, but they're still like going out to eat 5 nights a week. That's a different story. I have watched people that are struggling and doing everything that they can and are still having to put their bills on credit cards, be told by others, oh, well, you're just not living within your means. And at some point, you have to come to terms with, they're not saying that because they're trying to be corrective. They're not saying that because they're trying to point you towards better decisions. They are telling you that because at the end of the day, all they are saying is, no, I want you to suffer more. I want you to never eat red meat. You should be eating canned tuna and beans and rice, and you should never be allowed to eat anything else. Oh, you had ramen's 5 night this week, but another night you decided to make Italian sausage spaghetti, and it cost you $5 instead of the $2 meat. Like, no, you're not allowed to do that. I need you to suffer. I want you. I am excited by your suffering. That's what people mean when they are telling these other people to live within their means. It is literally a call for someone that they deem as not a valuable human being to suffer more. Because what do you mean you don't think, like, do you know how expensive it is to eat healthy? Like, do you have any idea how expensive it is to eat healthy? And God forbid a person eat on garbage, high-calorie, cheap food that is not satiating, that then messes with your hormones, that causes you to end up with an eating disorder. It's like, no. Like, yeah, you can go eat Hamburger Helper and feed a couple of people cheap. But also, do you know what? Hamburger Helper's smaller than it used to be. You go make a thing of Hamburger Helper. When I was a kid, a thing of Hamburger Helper fed 4 people. A thing of Hamburger Helper right now might feed 2 people. A decent sized meal. If you're an active person and you actually need to eat, no. Everything is smaller. Everything is more expensive. In order to eat healthy, you are paying out the ass in order to eat a healthy meal. Do you know how much vegetables cost? Oh, instead of eating a candy bar, why don't you buy an apple? An apple's like $1.60 now for an apple. A bag of grapes? Hold on. Bear with me. We've eaten like 15 of these. Do you know how much this bag of grapes was? $8. $8. So no, stop telling people to live within their means when what you really are saying is, I need you to suffer more for my own enjoyment because I don't think you deserve humanity. I don't think you deserve dignity as a human being. Say what you really mean and stop doing this pussyfooting around.
Everybody needs to tell me what they do for a living because I'm literally flabbergasted. I'm 28 years old. I was in the Air Force for literally 7 years. Half of my 20s I spent in active duty military. I have thousands of hours of experience. I've been working since I was 13 years old. I've worked in hospitals, eating disorder rehabilitations centers, residential centers. I've worked as a barista. I have customer service. I've worked on the telephone lines. I've worked as a florist. I've literally done almost everything. I'm a full-time college student on my GI Bill. Where I live, the average rent is at least $2,800 to $3,000 a month. Just for like literally black mold, horrible like living situations. Like it's just disgusting. Tell me why. Like I'm almost done with my degree and I have so much experience like in the nutrition world and like healthcare, all that stuff. I have my associate's degree in health service management. Every job that is that's open, that's hiring is literally it's like $15 an hour. I genuinely I don't understand what's going on in the country.
What I'm about to say is probably going to make you sick, but you...
Is it that I have to work 40 hours a week just so I can have a place to live? 40 hours a week makes me $2,000 a month, and my rent is $1,660. So I work 40 hours a week so I can have a 2-bedroom apartment and an extra $300 a month. Like, it doesn't cover my phone, internet, food, you know? So not only do I not have any extra money, but just working makes me so exhausted that I don't have time either. Like, I get off work at 5:30, come home, I'm just so tired. I'm so tired that, like, anything that I need to do outside of work, I then just push off to, like, the weekend. And I'm like, I'm just too tired to do this after work. I'll wait until Saturday. So then I end up with so much to do on the weekend that ends up having to be split into 2 days. So I have to do stuff on both Saturday and Sunday. So then I don't get a day off. I don't get a day to relax. I don't get to decompress. So it is really like working 7 days a week, constantly. And I don't want to do that anymore, right? Like, I don't care how poor and miserable I would have to be, but I literally can't have a place to live without this, you know? Like, I don't know what to do. I'm not made for this. I don't have the money, time, or energy to enjoy my life outside of work, and I don't know what to do about it anymore, you know? I'm so tired.
Living in America right now feels like a punishment. You wake up already behind, you go to work just to stay broke, and you watch the cost of everything rise while your paycheck doesn't move an inch. Groceries are a luxury, rent is robbery, healthcare is a joke, and somehow we're the ones blamed for not budgeting better. People are working 2-3 jobs and still choosing between food or gas. Families are crammed into apartments because buying a house became a fantasy. You can't afford to get sick. You can't afford to rest. You can't afford to exist. But they keep telling us the economy's strong. Strong for who? Because it sure as hell isn't the people doing the work. We're out here treading water while billionaires build rockets, politicians trade stocks, and corporations raise prices just because they can. We were promised opportunity. We got survival. And what makes this worse is watching people blame themselves. Like somehow you failed because you can't afford a 1-bedroom anymore. Like you didn't do enough, when the truth is the math just stopped adding up years ago. They told us to work harder, but never told us they'd change the finish line. This isn't a country full of lazy people. It's a country full of exhausted ones. Simple as that.
The cost of living in this country is currently, it's not going to be, it is currently unsustainable. And there are people that they know this, but then they'll still look at somebody else that's struggling and then tell them they're not doing good enough. I want you to imagine somebody that makes $75,000 a year. That's a pretty high up wage in terms of like top earners in this country, $75,000 a year. And we're going to go through some things here. This is a person with no debt outside of a car. And please don't hit me with the, you can go buy a car for, shut up, you can't, shut up, stop saying ridiculous things. An entry-level decent car is $30,000. So this person who puts $200 a month into insurance and they pay 5% into their 401k because shut up, people should be able to put money into their retirement. Because if you're not doing it now, you're never going to get to start doing it later. So after those two things come out of their paycheck and their taxes are paid, they bring home $53,850 a year from a $75,000 paycheck. Average rent in my state for a 1-bedroom apartment, because an adult should be able to live by themselves, $1,700. That car payment at 6% for an entry-level, very reasonable sedan, nothing fancy, that car payment's $579 a month. Car insurance, $240 or so a month for a lot of vehicles in this day and age. You're a young person, you've got a nice job, but the insurance companies still want to screw you over. Food. You only cook at home. You never, ever go out. You only cook at home and you only eat decent quality food because a human being should be allowed to eat decent quality food. You pay $879 a month for that. You spend $250 a month in gas. You wear and tear on your car $100 a month. $80 for your phone, $80 for your internet, $175 a month for your electricity, $70 for your water, $20 for your cash. You make 75 grand a year, and outside of a car payment, you have zero debt. Do you know how much money you have left over annually at a $75,000 wage? You do nothing. You don't own a Netflix. You don't go out on a date. You don't pay to go to a park. You don't go watch a movie. You do nothing. If you can't find it on the internet for free, you don't get to do it. If you can't cook it at home for your $800, you don't get to do it. You have $3,700 left over annually. That's like $320 a month. And there's going to be, well, that's 300. Shut up. Shut your stupid, contrarian, edgelord mouth. That's not a doctor bill, because God knows just because we have insurance doesn't mean that we don't still pay far out the ass when we go to the doctors. People like to be entertained. They want to date. They want to. There's those of you out there that will tell somebody living like this on $75,000 a year before taxes that they are not doing what they're supposed to do, that they should get a second job, that they should get a side hustle, that they should get a better job. And the fact that you would look at somebody with no debt other than a car and say something like this to them means objectively you're a moron and you live in a fantasy world. This is unsustainable.
So there's a phrase a lot of people hear whenever they talk about struggling financially. You are living above your means. But more people online are starting to push back against that idea, because for very many Americans right now, the issue isn't luxury spending, it's survival costs. You're talking rent, groceries, gas, insurance, utilities, and things that used to feel manageable now feel noticeably heavier than they did just a few years ago. And that's why a growing number of people, especially younger adults, feel like something fundamental about everyday life has changed. So the question remains, are people really living above their means, or are the basics simply becoming harder to afford? So guys, let's subscribe and continue watching, and then I'll be back with more commentary. Full credits to the original creators of these videos. Thank you.
What's up, America? Does it seem like it's very difficult to live in the United States now? Like it's much harder to make ends meet? Well, if this seems like it's the worst financial time in your entire life, you're right. And now I have proof that you're right. It is the most difficult time to live in the United States ever. So let me show you what I'm talking about, because you'll be like, holy fuck. This is the current economic condition index since 1960. And what you're seeing here on the right side is the lowest current economic condition index recorded since they've been recording this. Well, what exactly does this mean? This indicates how difficult life is here in the United States, economically speaking, for the average American. As you can see, it's getting more and more volatile, and as of right now, 2026, it is the most difficult time financially to live in the United States since 1960. This chart shows you that it's more difficult as an average citizen to make ends meet economically than any time since the 60s. Well, you might ask yourself, why is this? Why is it so fucking hard then? Well, this information I'm showing you could be part of the problem. This right here shows the entire total wealth of the United States is 175 trillion. Our deficit here, 39 trillion, almost 40 trillion. But if you look at this, the top 10% of people control $120 trillion of this money. And you can see here the bottom 50% of America, the bottom 50% only have about $4.5 trillion to work with. Most of us in America are the bottom 50% of wage earners. So the top 10% have $120 trillion. The bottom half of America has 4 to 5 trillion. Basically, the top 10% can pay off the entire national debt and still have shit tons of money to play with, while the bottom 50% have nothing. And when I say the bottom 50%, that's 150 million Americans or more. And since half the country falls into that, and since the rich have more money than God, You can see why it's so difficult to survive. It's so difficult to survive because the wealthy people have all the fucking money. And they refuse to fucking give a fucking penny to the poor. Now, this could be alleviated by getting a little more money from the ultra fucking wealthy and reinvesting it into the United States or helping the poor. But of course, as you know, if the government taxes them at their fair share that they're supposed to pay, the government will just take the money and misappropriate it, and nobody that's poor will get help whatsoever. It'll end up going for trans surgeries and abortions out in Guatemala somehow. But you have to understand, when roughly 2/3 of the country or more have no money to play with whatsoever, and the top 10% have every dime of it, you're gonna have problems economically. Now, you might ask yourself, how did the wealthy get this fucking wealthy? And how did average Americans get this poor? Well, that's because the ultra wealthy that have this money took all your factories and jobs and sent them over to China and Mexico. Then the benefits you were going to get, your future, the pensions, the 401ks, the health care that you were supposed to get, they just kept the difference and it made them wealthy. So this isn't one of those trickle-down economic things. This is the reason these wealthy people are as wealthy as they are. It's because they stole your future, sent the jobs to China, Mexico, Vietnam, wherever, took the factories over there too. You have no jobs you can get. And then they told you to keep buying from them and raise the prices. These are not the billionaires back in the day that used to reinvest in the United States. These are billionaires that took your fucking money, refused to reinvest in the United States, gave it all to somebody else and pocketed the difference so they could buy yachts like Jeff Bezos and rub it in your face like a fucking dickhead. These aren't the same billionaires like back in the day that built Carnegie Hall and used to build parks and amphitheaters for the general public to uplift the United States. These are people that stole your future, gave it to themselves and anybody else they wanted, and made sure not a dime went to the United States ever again. So face it, these rich people aren't the rich people of your grandfather's day. These rich people are the worst fucks in the planet. And that I just showed you caused what we're living in now. People like Jeff Bezos, that's why it's so difficult. Oh, and if you don't think it is, why don't you just go get that factory job that you were supposed to get to build your future with? Oh, wait a minute, the factory closed down and went to Mexico? Gee, what a surprise. Oh, and the CEO of the company tripled his wealth? Man, that's a weird coincidence, isn't it?
I'm sorry, but boomers ruined the economy for us. Boomers will say, just work hard and you'll be able to buy a house. When they bought a house, it was $40,000. College was cheap, rent was cheap, groceries were even cheaper. Now rent is like $1,800 for a studio apartment, but somehow we're just magically supposed to save money. Like, genuinely, how are we supposed to get ahead in this economy? Back then, you could support a family on one income. You could buy a house working at Sears full time. But now that just seems so unattainable. Budgeting in America in 2026 is basically survival at this point. You literally have to have a budget. You literally have to know where every single dollar of your money is going. This year I started using the Mine app and forced myself to make a budget because I literally was having no money left over after rent and groceries and other bills, stressing me out so much. Do I have a ton left over now? No, but I at least know where it's going. If you're struggling in 2026, I promise you, you are not alone.
As an American, there are some things that you can truly never fully understand until you leave the United States. I moved out of the United States 2.5 years ago, and since then, there have been moments where certain things happen that completely and utterly break everything that I've ever known. And today, one of those things happened. I'm currently living in Germany, and very recently, I just got a part-time barista job. It's completely a part-time thing and just something for me to make some extra cash on the side. And I literally cannot even work more than 20 hours a week per my resident permit. And I haven't even started working yet, but there are some things about this job that have already broken me in a good way. As I'm in talks with the boss trying to get this job, I'm expecting like, okay, we'll do like an interview or something and they can see if they like me or not. And the boss emails me about like, they don't do like an interview, they do like a tryout day. And they're telling me like, come in for the tryout day and see if you like it and if you fit in with the environment well. And when I went in for the tryout day and like all went really well and stuff, the boss asked me at the end, so like if you feel good about this job, like if you like it, if it suits you well and you think you might want to stay here, then just like write me an email and let me know by like Tuesday or whatever. And they're not saying anything about like whether they even like me or not. Like all the focus seems to be on whether like I like the job and I want to stay there. Like I ended up having to ask like, well, do you like me? Like my German isn't so good. So like, is it okay or is it like a problem? Like, how do you feel like I fit in with the environment? And only then did I hear from the boss like that, yeah, they liked me too. And then as we're going through the hiring process, like the first thing that they tell me is like, okay, the paperwork should be ready to sign in like 2 weeks. First things first, I need a little bit of information from you. And the first thing she asked me was, when do you want to take your vacation days this year? Literally the first thing that they asked me. Guess how many vacation days I get for a part-time 20-hour-a-week barista job? I am allotted 36 vacation days, or 6 weeks in a 6-day work week schedule. 6 weeks. But the thing that broke me today was an email from my boss telling me that not only is it possible for me to go on the public healthcare system, but it's literally required for me to. For context, this has never been possible for me before, and since I turned 25 and moved outside of the United States, I've only been able to have essentially travel insurance. And now through the German public healthcare system, I can pay into it and then see pretty much any doctor that I want to, as long as they have an available appointment for free or pretty much free. And the amount that you pay into it is like 100 euros a month. I haven't been to a dentist in like 10 years, and I know that partially that's definitely my fault, but I literally through like the public health insurance, it's like required for you to go like twice a year. I was like kind of freaking out when I first got the email, and I was like texting my German friends so that they could like help me understand better, and because like I translated it, but I was like, I don't want this to be like a false translation or something and me get my hopes up for no reason. And they were like, congratulations, like, but I was like really overwhelmed by it, and they were like, I don't understand what the big deal is. Like, yeah, of course, anyone in Germany who makes more than like 600 euros a month, they automatically can go on the public health insurance. And they're asking me like, what, you didn't know that? And I'm like, no, I didn't know that. Of course I could have like researched that, but like the thing is when you're socialized like as an American, like why would I have even expected that or thought to research something like that? We don't even have a public healthcare system like this. And a 20-hour-a-week barista gig would never give you social safety nets from it. Like, why would I have expected that? People who are not American will never understand that Americans systemically is so harsh and unforgiving and just cruel that it socializes you. If you're poor, if you're not wealthy, then it socializes you into having just an overall pessimistic mindset or having expectations that everything will be so difficult and or impossible that you should set your standards super, super, super low, like in hell, so that you can be easier to exploit. Why would I have ever thought to look something like that up? I'm used to a part-time job giving you nothing. I'm used to public healthcare not even really existing. I'm used to literally everyone I love around me being like constantly in this state of like nervous system dysregulation because they're constantly in fear that if they have 2-3 bad months, then they're literally on the street. I'm used to seeing women in abusive situations not be able to leave their husband because they will lose their healthcare or it will be too financially crippling for them and they are terrified of being homeless. I'm used to people working 2 to 3 jobs and still being so scared of not being able to make ends meet for their family. I'm used to things being impossibly expensive. I'm used to things being intentionally made to be as difficult as possible to deter people from obtaining them. I'm used to things being unforgiving and uncaring and unhuman. Like, I can't believe how easy it was for me to obtain the essential care that every human being needs and deserves just by serving a little bit of coffee. Like, of course, you can read and research about other countries, like, as much as possible, but there's some things that you don't fully understand until you leave the United States. I'm so angry and full of grief that our government and our society and media and whoever else has convinced us that the way that we live is normal. I'm currently writing a Substack article talking about all of the various things that I've learned that you can't really understand until you leave the United States. And so you guys can follow me there if you are interested in more information, like in this video.
So one thing you hear constantly now is that ordinary life feels more expensive in ways people didn't fully expect. A salary that once sounded stable no longer stretches the same way. People who are employed full-time still describe feeling financially trapped, and actually this frustration comes from the fact that many are not talking about luxury lifestyles. They are talking about paying rents, just the basics, buying groceries, driving to work, covering bills, basic life maintenance. And when basic life starts feeling difficult, people naturally become frustrated with being told the problem is simply bad budgeting. A major reason this conversation keeps growing is because many everyday costs increased significantly over the past several years. Housing costs rose sharply in many cities. Groceries became more expensive. Transportation and insurance costs climbed too. So even if someone's income increased slightly, many people say it still feels like they fell behind overall. That's why budgeting advice alone feels frustrating to some people right now, because you can actually cut unnecessary spending, but you can't fully budget your way out of rising basic costs forever, especially when wages don't rise at the same speed. This pressure actually is especially visible among young adults, Gen Zs, the young millennials, and for many people entering adulthood today, independence looks very different compared to previous generations. Right now, we are seeing people living with strangers, more roommates, living with parents longer. They are delaying major life decisions, not necessarily because people lack ambition, but because the financial math feels harder. A salary that once might have supported one person comfortably in some areas now barely covers essentials in others. And over time, that actually creates a feeling of instability even among people who are technically doing everything right. Another reason this topic resonates is because many people feel like everyday life is becoming increasingly shaped by large corporations. Housing, food, healthcare, streaming services, subscriptions. People feel like more parts of life are becoming monetized and expensive at the same time. And whether or not someone agrees with every criticism, there's clearly a growing feeling that ordinary people are losing flexibility financially while major companies continue expanding profits. And that perception fuels a lot of frustration online. One of the strongest emotional reactions comes from the feeling of being misunderstood, because when someone is struggling to cover basics, hearing just budget better, that can actually sound dismissive, especially when people already feel like they've cut back significantly. Cooking at home, avoiding trouble, you are sharing housing, reducing spending, working longer hours, two jobs. But many people feel like they are already trying everything they can. So the frustration becomes less about personal choices and more about whether the overall system still feels sustainable for ordinary people. At the center of this entire conversation is one feeling: pressure, not necessarily collapse or hopelessness, but constant financial pressure. And when enough people start feeling that pressure at the same time, it changes how society feels overall. People become anxious about the future, more uncertain about stability. They are more focused on survival rather than long-term planning. And that's why these conversations keep spreading online, because millions of people recognize parts of their own experience in them. At the end of the day, this conversation is bigger than budgeting. It's really about whether ordinary life still feels affordable for ordinary people. And clearly, more people are starting to question where things are heading next. So guys, if you want more videos breaking down modern life, economic pressure, and the realities people are experiencing around the world, make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for the next one. And actually, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think people are truly living above their means, or do you think the cost of basic life has changed completely? Thank you very much for watching. Subscribe and I'll see you in the next video.